Hi, I'm Dave Karger. Welcome back to TCM. Our afternoon continues now with a musical gangster comedy starring Frank Sinatra and his Rat Pack buddies Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. From Warner Brothers in 1964, it's Robin and the Seven Hoods. Set in Prohibition-era Chicago, this parody of the classic Robin Hood legend stars Sinatra as a gangster boss who accidentally earns a reputation as a major philanthropist. At this point in his career, Frank Sinatra had the clout in Hollywood to make any film he wanted, and beginning with Ocean's 11 in 1960, he spearheaded a handful of productions as vehicles for himself and his closest friends. Robin and the Seven Hoods once again co-stars Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., but this time, in place of Peter Lawford and Joey Bishop, Bing Crosby joined the cast. This was the second time moviegoers got to see Sinatra and Crosby together as leading men on the big screen, 8 years after their first pairing in High Society. With Crosby on board, the film became much more of a traditional musical. Originally, it was supposed to be directed by another of Sinatra's famous co-stars from his early musical days at MGM, Gene Kelly. But with Sinatra serving as producer this time around, the dynamic with Kelly was different. It quickly became apparent that their working styles clashed. Gene Kelly was a meticulous craftsman, while Frank Sinatra was just interested in having a good time, and he had no patience for Kelly's rehearsal schedule. Before production even began, Kelly dropped out and was replaced by Gordon Douglas, a director whose style was a much better fit for Sinatra. Douglas had previously worked with Sinatra when he directed him opposite Doris Day in the 1954 musical Young at Heart. Unlike Gene Kelly, Gordon Douglas was ready to start shooting whenever Sinatra was, and he was happy to be done with a shot after one take. They worked so well together that Sinatra enlisted Douglas to direct 3 more of his films later in the decade. From 1964, also with Peter Falk, and featuring the Oscar-nominated song My Kind of Town, here is Robin and the Seven Hoods. In the early 1960s, Frank Sinatra produced movies like Robin and the Seven Hoods and Sergeants 3 purely for the sake of having fun with his Rat Pack friends. But unfortunately, things didn't turn out to be much fun during production on this movie. Early on, while shooting the funeral scene for Edward G. Robinson's character, Sinatra spotted a grave in the cemetery marked John Kennedy. He and his buddies joked about it until the next day they learned that President Kennedy, who was a close friend of theirs, had been assassinated. A few weeks later, while rehearsing a kidnapping scene for the film, Sinatra got word that his own son, Frank Jr., had been kidnapped in Nevada and was being held for ransom. Authorities were able to return Frank Sinatra Jr. home unharmed. The kidnapping sequence never made it into the movie. Up next, Steve McQueen gives an iconic performance as a rebellious police detective in an action-packed thriller from 1968.
Next on TCM, Bullet. Then, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And later, The Killing. Colson Whitehead puts out a hit on TCM tonight.